Welcome, everyone. I am so glad to be back. Lord have mercy. Welcome. I am your host, Lexx Black. You're tuning into my show, Midnight Arcade. This is episode 14. Before you do anything else, my people, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell icon to be notified for whenever I drop that new heat. You heard? Yes, sir. We are back. I got hit with a sledgehammer of a cold. Took me out for like a week. It was nasty. But we're back, y'all. Mechas. These giant robots of mass destruction and ultra coolness have always had a special place in my heart ever since I first laid eyes on them many years ago. Whether it was classics like Robotech to Evangelion to friggin' Voltron and Transformers, among many others, there are countless iterations of these awesome machines spread throughout the annals of anime history. But today I wanted to focus on 5 of my absolute favorite mecha animes of all time and why I love them so much. But we won't get into that until after the jump.
3, 2, 1, go!
War is humanity's #1 blight. Survival is the #1 goal. How they all go about achieving said goals varies greatly, and that's the beauty. All of these shows see humanity facing some form of existential crisis that, if left alone, will obliterate them entirely. And it's usually left up to unsuspecting and/or aspiring heroes from all different walks of life to rise to the occasion and save humanity from the grave ills that threaten it, right? Their motives? To live. Right? Their tools, giant humanoid murder machines capable of cataclysmic destruction with some incredible flair and really good aesthetics to boot. So I'm going to give you my top 5 mecha anime of all time. I'm just going to give them to you straight. The way how I'm going to present is a little bit different. Gundam Wing, Gundam Seed, and Seed Destiny. I bunched them 2 together as one. Kira Yamato is the GOAT, and Shin Asuka is still a bitch in my eyes. Always will be. Gundam 00, Macross Frontier, and Knights of Sidonia. Eureka 7 would definitely be up here, but I'm gonna get to that in another show, trust me. Eureka 7 is definitely up there though. Anyway, here we go. Gundam, the coveted, most celebrated mecha franchise series of all time in my personal opinion. I could be wrong, of course. No matter the iteration or the timeline, whether it be the UC, Cosmic Era, or even the AD era Gundam timelines, the collective creators over there at Sunrise, they're supposed to have a name change soon. Bandai Namco, something. Correct me in the comment sections, y'all. But the collective creators over there at Sunrise, for the time being, what their name is, on the multiple Gundam series are always going to do a lot of things very well. Okay, namely the socio-political implications and complexities of war, power, awesome animation, and out of this world mecha design, and last but not least, extraordinary, exemplary mecha combat. Not to mention being able to weave all of these incredible elements and important aspects into great, easy to digest storytelling through compelling characters and plot development. Anyone who knows anything about Gundam knows that each of these unique series will always incorporate these very aspects in one way or another, which is why I will not be going into crazy depth for each of my favorite Gundam shows. I'm just gonna mention some of the things that stood out to me that I like, because quite frankly, if I went on a deep dive, I'd have to do separate episodes for each and we'd be here forever, and that's not what I'm trying to do. But I will tell you why I love the Gundam shows I put on my list. So let's get into it. Gundam Wing. It was the first time I was fully reintroduced and re-immersed into the world of Gundam that restarted my love of giant mecha. Wing had everything you could ask for. Well, I could ask for. Hiro Yui, the sociopath with his lovable self.
Another funny ass factor was actually in Wing was like when Hiro Yui literally met Relina for the very first time. And he walked past her, cool and nonchalant, as cool as a cucumber, walked past her and is like, I'll kill you. Yo, Hiro Yui for that alone is the GOAT. No pretext, nothing. Just walk past and say, yeah, I'm gonna kill your ass. Like, crazy.
right? Zex Marquis, aka Millardo Peacecraft, spoiler alert, as the perfect and completely understandable antagonist of the show eventually. He became the antagonist. Treize Kusrenada and his effortless cool and swag to go along with his calculating and precise leadership.
We can't forget about Lady Un and her super bipolar characterization. You know, when she's in the military uniform with the glasses, she is brutal, of the brutal right hand and #1 fan and admirer of Treize Kusrenada, right? She takes the glasses off, she puts the dress on, she becomes Lady Un, the peacekeeper, and really sticks to the role. And it really threw me for a loop as a young kid watching this, because I'm like, when is this chick gonna flip, man? Because she's on to something, right? Lady Un was definitely an interesting character.
Then we have the 5 pilot frenemies: Hiro Yui, Chang Wu-fei, Troll Barton, Catcher Rabarba Winner, and Duo Maxwell. Their eventual paths to creating close bonds as brothers-in-arms, from frenemies to brothers-in-arms. It was a beautiful thing to see throughout. But one of the coolest things that I really loved about Wing was the eventual camaraderie of the 5, but also the upgrades. Oh, woo! Towards the end, when it was the all-out space battles, oh my God, yes. Fire. The primary source of conflict in Gundam Wing was between large human factions, between Oz, White Fang, and the colonies out in space. And of course, you know, we have great supporting characters like Relina Peacecraft and the Peacecraft family, and all of the supporting characters like the scientist that sent the 5 boys out to Earth. Gundam Wing was great. Gundam Wing was great because, like I said, it was a reintroduction for me back into the world of Mecha, and it touched on a lot of stuff, even down to like Hiro Yui's crazy Buster rifle and how, oh my gosh. But again, they broached a lot of adult subjects, not adult in the explicit way. Get your minds out of the gutter, y'all. I'm talking about the implications of war in a really digestible way. For me, at the time, I was very, very young. I was a teenager at that time. I just became a teenager around the time that it reached the Western shores here, Western Hemisphere, I mean. And I was able to understand all of the things that were going on. They were covering some pretty heavy topics. But Gundam Wing was awesome. Hiro Yui is a G. The Zero system was the same system that enhanced the cognitive abilities of a pilot beyond superhuman, allowing them to wield their Gundams like extensions of themselves in a way that other pilots couldn't. Amazing. Just all of that stuff. Just incredible. Gundam Wing is a classic to me. Classic. Gundam Seed. Oh man, I know Seed catches a lot of flack from diehards for a myriad of reasons, and maybe I'm just a weirdo, which
could very well be the case.
But I truly enjoyed Seed, man. I truly enjoyed the Gundam Seed series because of the Gundam designs, the action, and the prevalence of the coordinators, whom, if you want to get an actual definition of coordinators are humans engineered from birth to be special, have physical and mental abilities at birth that are made to be above those of the base human being at their base level. They are essentially living supercomputers to an extent. They can simulate events in their minds to give themselves multiple options on what to do on a given situation.
Bro, not only are coordinators stronger, smarter, faster, more durable than normal human beings, but they're also immune to almost every disease known to man. So you think that the naturals, the humans, are gonna just sit there and let these guys live? Nah, they're gonna take serious umbrage with the coordinators, right? And henceforth, the crux of the conflict in Gundam Seed is really at its core about the differences between coordinators and naturals, and the naturals' inability to accept the coordinators, and vice versa, because there's a lot of it on the coordinator side as well. The one thing that's going against the coordinators is that, I think from what I read and from what I remember, there were fertility issues. And that's the one knock against them, but everything else,
they can enter this. They have this thing called the seed mode that allows them to enhances their physical abilities and puts their spatial awareness ability on par with new types and innovators, which we'll get to a little bit later. But new types are one of the consistent enhanced humans that you see across the Gundam iterations, whatever the timeline may be. So the prevalence between coordinators and the ensuing conflict between coordinators and naturals, aka regular humans. You can imagine how the hell that went. Humans never been good with differences. There's a particular intangible vibrance that is associated with Seed for me that I felt contrasts with the darker toned Wing and Gundam 00, despite Seed tackling some pretty heavy subjects and plot wrinkles in the story itself. I think I enjoyed Seed so much because to me it was one of the more far out there Gundam iterations that I've seen in the series, and the source of the conflict that rages on in the story is all about power struggle between the Naturals and Coordinators, as I touched on earlier. The Gundams in this series though are just different, just straight up different. They're brilliantly designed and they have some serious combat capabilities and cool features across the board. Like for instance, the all golden Gundam, the Akatsuki, piloted by Mula Flaga. This was my first full dive into the diversified human genome pool between Coordinators, Naturals, and new types within the Gundam universe. Not to mention those mostly Coordinators, with a few exceptions, entering the damn near God mode of Seed mode was also awesome to see. I lumped Seed Destiny in there under the Seed series, under the umbrella. Again, Seed Destiny had a litany of legitimate issues story-wise, and especially character-wise. And I'm looking at you, Shin Asuka. You still a bitch, bro. I can't stand Shin. But I love both series all the same. Honestly, my favorite part in Seed Destiny is when Kira let it be known that he could have killed Shin easily, but he let the motherfucker live because he's nice like that. Like, that was just straight raw. I love it. Gundam 00, guys. Setsuna F Seiei is Gundam, and Gundam is Setsuna F Seiei. For those who watched it know exactly what I mean with that, right? The focus pilot of the amazing Exia Gundam is no slouch, and neither is the 00 series. Another cool thing that I really liked about 00, before I get into the meat and potatoes, the pilots, man. Characters. One of them thinks they're an artificial intelligence. Another one thinks they're Gundam. Another one thinks they're a sharpshooting ladies man. I love the contrasting, and I love the introduction of the Crowns, who are like the opposite forces of the Gundams in this story, and just the piloting and the technology is amazing in Gundam 00. The main source of conflict in Gundam 00 is energy. Celestial Being, the organization with the Gundams, is the organization also that is hell-bent on stopping all wars by having the biggest guns on the block to bring everyone else to heel, because they're pacifists. Which in of itself is hilarious, because if these cats were really about peace, they would actually, pursue peace peacefully. But anyway, their warped ideology, mind you guys, Celestial Being is not, for the most part, not the bad guy. Of course, in any Gundam iteration, you're gonna get some amazing betrayals and double crossing and switching sides and all that stuff. That's what they're really good at, introducing into the plot wrinkles. But their warped ideology, Celestial Being, gave us the continued battles in Gundam 00, so I am not complaining. What I really loved about this series is that it took a lot from both Wing and Seed, Gundam Wing and Gundam Seed, and created its own cool balance between the two.
You know, it's pretty cool. Like, I liken Setsuna F Seiei, aka Gundam. He's kind of like a cool mix character-wise between Hiero Yui and Kira Yamato, and let me explain. He's like a toned-down sociopathic version of Hiero Yui. He doesn't have his suicidal tendencies that Hiero Yui has, but he's very stoic, very focused, very non-social, barely social, right? Has a hard time showing it. His emotions and expressing himself properly, right? But he's Kira Yamato, and he covers that, and he's an excellent Gundam pilot, right? But he's Kira Yamato because he's an innovator, and he goes into the innovator mode, and he becomes more than human, right? Just like Kira Yamato being a coordinator who's already at base form more than human, but then goes into Seed mode, and again, the added bonus for Setsuna F Seiei is that he can then force his Gundam into Trans-Am mode, with the quality of his GN particles in the Trans-Am mode being something incredible. You know what I mean? So he's kind of like a really cool mix between Hiero Yui and Kira Yamato in cool different ways.
The sources of conflict seemed very much grounded in reality. And what I mean is for the struggle for sustainable energy, because in this timeline, it's the AD timeline, fossil fuels were nearly or pretty much depleted. And the consolidation of world powers around 3 orbital elevators gave them access to the more abundant energy source via powerful Dyson rings. Other countries who could not compete or gain entry into the 3 main world powers, which are the Union of Solar Energy and Free Nations, for short, the Union, the Human Reform League, HRL, yall, and the Advanced European Union, AEU, those countries who couldn't join or couldn't make their way to the three main powers were left destitute with obsolete equipment left to fight for the scraps. It's not hard to foresee a future where fossil fuels run dry and then there's an energy crisis, so it kind of hit home watching Gundam 00 in many ways. Again, 00 gave me serious Gundam Wing vibes, and I felt like it was a spiritual successor to the amazing series from the late 90s. And its infusion of modern day concepts within the Gundam universe made this one an absolute gem for me, guys. Then we have more interesting concepts out there like the artificial intelligence known as Veda, and most importantly, the existence of innovators, which are sort of similar to coordinators, but the origin and the reason and the makeup as to how they are a little bit different. Innovators become innovators based from human beings who are exposed to high levels of GN particles, which are a prevalent source of energy in Gundam 00. GN particles, emit no heat, they scramble sensors, they power the Gundams in this story, give them a near indefinite supply of energy, so on and so forth. And then in that, if you are able to manipulate the GN particles in a certain way as an innovator, you can enter Trans-Am mode, which elevates the abilities of your Gundam tenfold. It's amazing, guys. If you have some time, make sure you watch Gundam 00, and if I made any incorrect statements, make sure you correct me in the comment section, right?
Yo, another cool tidbit that I noticed that I like to make a parallel to, the Gundam franchise shares something in common with the Final Fantasy franchise, Final Fantasy video game franchise, in that in almost every iteration of Gundam, you're gonna find a masked character, whether it's Char, right? Zex Marquis, Raoul Lacusé, you know what I'm saying? And the list goes on and on. You're always gonna, or you're more likely to find that there is a masked character who plays a significant antagonist role in the Gundam series. And the same kind of parallel can be said in the Final Fantasy series, right? In almost every iteration of Final Fantasy, there is a character named Sid, and they are usually a pilot or some sort of fix-it kind of person, and they're usually a Dragoon Lancer or whatever. Their alignment is usually good, but like the parallels are there. Like in every iteration of Final Fantasy, you'll find a person named Sid, right? And in every iteration of Gundam, you're gonna find a masked person who usually plays an antagonist. I just figured I'd highlight that too. It is something that I thought was pretty cool.
All right, switching gears here. Where the multiple Gundam series can be sort of grouped, these next two can kind of be put into their own group of sorts as well. Civilization on the move, society in the skies, so to speak. Galactic arcs, like Noah's Ark, filled with the last of humanity in a struggle to fight against sentient hive-minded alien races, pushing humans to the brink of extinction. The equalizer? You guessed it. Murder machines! In the form of giant mecha. Macross Frontier and Knights of Sidonia share these traits, but I'm gonna get into what made me love them for very different reasons. Macross Frontier. Whew! I'm fully aware that Macross has been around for damn near as long as Gundam. And like Gundam, there are different iterations of its namesake within the series, the franchise name, with different characters and settings. I, however, was introduced to the entire Macross franchise via Macross Frontier, and damn, I was blown away. Whew. Whole entire civilizations existing on massive mobile space colonies that are both maneuverable and combat capable is and will always be a concept that piques my interest. An ace pilot by accident, an established and beautiful but bitter pop star, and another rising singer with girl next door qualities, and a literal out of this world voice are three of the unlikely forces that are humanity's greatest weapon against the Vajra, a biomechanical alien race in the form of insectoid spaceship-sized mecha of various sizes, designs, and shape. The ace pilot, a student named Alto, the pop princess named Cheryl, and the rising singer named Ranka, their paths cross and form into an eventual love triangle, with Alto being the center point of focus for the two girls. To me, Macross Frontier is fire because for an action buff like me, and it had plenty of action in this, I seriously enjoyed the J-pop vibes and the romance factor tied into the story, right? I ain't gonna front. Also, the relationship of the Vajra with the humans and their connection via the V-type virus, the virus that the Vajra use to infect humans so that they can therefore communicate with humans and make them do their bidding. This, of course, comes at the expense of the infected human, and the Vajra can then possess said human and manipulate them, like I said, to do their bidding. What was really awesome for me was how the story implemented the literal power of song in conjunction with the power and skill of the special mecha, the VF-25, piloted by Alto. It's kind of reminiscent of the original Wing Gundam, which would kind of transform between a jet and a humanoid mecha, right? And it was piloted by Alto. Cheryl and Ranka's voices possessed quantum-like qualities called fold waves that allow them to disrupt the communication and operation of the Vajra. So you can see how these three become so pivotal in fighting the Vajra themselves. And with their voices, it gives the Macross Frontier fleets a chance to destroy the Vajra enemies in combat.
Macross Frontier was also really cool because like the entire ship, the Frontier, it literally had its own center of gravity in its own oceans, cities, civilizations. It was like an Earth inside of a spaceship, you know. That's what made it so cool to me, like to have all of that, and it's traveling the void of space. So it's a mobile Earth in a sense, just a scaled down version, which was really, really, really cool to see. Like even down to agriculture and its own like designated areas for everything. Like I said, atmosphere, own rivers and oceans and landscapes and cities, and really cool stuff, man. Really cool stuff. Same with Sidonia. Sidonia seemed a little bit more ironcladish, a little bit more dark, but it had its own working civilization. I mean, it is a spaceship that housed 500,000 people, you know, 500,000 people, and sustained them for thousands of years. Now, granted, generations of those 500,000 people. It's crazy. That's another thing that really, if I didn't point out before, that's another reason why I love shows like Macross Frontier and Knights of Sidonia, is the civilization aspect and how they were able to consolidate civilization into these mobile, scaled down versions of Earth in space. Cool stuff.
Again, there's a lot more to go into the story. I'm just giving you like surface level stuff and what made me really love this show. There's a lot, the plot in Macross Frontier is amazing. And like I said, it's driven forward by technology, quantum fold waves, and the love triangle and J-pop. You know what I mean? It's cool. It's cool. Knights of Sidonia. Wow. Knights of Sidonia, in my opinion, is the much darker, moodier, and brooding cousin of Macross Frontier. A lot of the same concepts are there, right? A massive maneuverable spaceship colony called Sidonia that houses close to 500,000 people living there. The Sidonia is searching the galaxies looking for a new planet for humanity to call home. And they've been doing that for thousands of years at the start of the current storyline. An enemy alien race called the Gauna, G-A-U-N-A, I don't know how to pronounce it, correct me in the comment section, guys. A shape-shifting, near indestructible, galactic-based placenta matter, hell-bent on destroying humanity because they're simply alien assholes and that's what they want to do, right? In this story, it's centered around an ace pilot named Nagate. We find out that most human residents of Sidonia have been modified to perform photosynthesis so that they don't need to eat much food in the traditional way. There are immortal characters with insane healing factors and other cool modifications. You know, with the photosynthesis factor, these humans were modified to be able to ration food so that they don't have to rely so much on raw materials to create resources for food and in the traditional way how you and I would eat. So that's crazy, right? They have clones. What sci-fi mecha anime would be good without clones? I mean, come on, of course. And of course, the ever-present and ever-malevolent threat of the sentient and very inhuman alien species whose sole mission is the eradication of humankind. Last but definitely not least, amazing mecha and mecha combat and mecha skills and so on and so forth. Of course, Knights of Sidonia is definitely a trip to the dark side when you compare it with Macross Frontier, and a good trip it is. It's definitely worth the watch, and I suggest that you watch it.
Yeah. Many of these anime share a common trait. The power of a strong, angelic-like maiden, right? Whether it's Relina Peacecraft of Gundam Wing fame, Lacus Klein or Kagali Yula Atha of Gundam Seed fame, to Cheryl and Ranka of Macross Frontier, or Marina Ismail, excuse me if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, correct me in the comments, of Gundam 00 fame. These stories' plots are very much also driven by these powerful maidens who compel the main protagonist to persevere and, you know, like do the right thing that eventually helps them overcome the severe adversity that they face and become victorious. So I just wanted to point that out too.
In closing, I had a few questions that I generated and I figured I'd share them with you guys. So I thought of it, and I always think of things like this. And I was like, as I was reviewing the content, I was like, man, what universe would I like to exist in if I were an anime character between these 5 shows? And I picked Gundam Seed or Macross Frontiers universe. There's just something about how those shows are depicted that is very appealing to me. I think the type of technology, the people, the stories, and the intangible vibrancy that I spoke about earlier is what, that it gives off to me. That's something that I really would enjoy being an anime character in those universes. If you were to choose one pilot and their mech that you think would crush in any of the mech universes mentioned today, which one do you think would do the best? Let's be clear, y'all. Any one of the main characters from any of these stories that I talked about today would do extremely well in each other's universes, right? They all have similar high-level skill sets and abilities as ace pilots. But if it were up to me, I would absolutely choose Kira Yamato in the Strike Freedom. Not only because this is my favorite Gundam ever, like ever in life, but combined with it, Kira being an ultimate coordinator. See, there's coordinators and then there's the ultimate coordinator. There's levels to this shit, right? Look up Kira on your own time. Trust me, it's dope, right? But with his ultimate coordinator abilities, I can easily see him dominating in the Wing universe or the universe of Knights of Sidonia or Gundam 00 and beyond. You know the vibes. If you watch the Seed series, you know exactly what I mean, right? But anyway, guys, this was just my scatterbrain top 5. I'm back, episode 14 of my show Midnight Arcade. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell icon to be notified for whenever I drop that new heat. You heard. If you like how I did this, I'm gonna do more. I have some other ideas, man. Be on the lookout for episode 15. I'm so glad to be back with y'all, man. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'm gone.
3,